the biggest learning maybe of my life honestly came from the pandemic. And there was a wonderful quote that came out on Twitter that said, what we're witnessing is the withdrawal from the addiction to the myth of certainty. And I went, Jesus, it hit something very deep in my core. And I started a lot of reading, a lot of sort of self-reflection. I think a lot of us did this in the pandemic. And a big realization was, who the fuck told us life was supposed to be predictable? Nothing in nature is predictable. Everything is moving constantly. Anything that's not moving is dead. Even rocks are growing, right? But somehow human beings have the arrogance to think, no, we can actually control everything. You get the right grades, you go to the right school, you get the right job, you marry the right person or whatever it is. It's just not like that. It's not this sort of steady climb. It's not even a roller coaster. It's like this gyroscopic freaking nightmare of tectonic plates moving all the time.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur Organization Business Podcast. I am your host, Linh Podetti. My guest today is Laura Verallo de Bertotto, who is the CEO of VMV HYPOALLERGENICS, a Philippine company that's here to save the world's skin with the safest, most proven, effective care on the planet. VMV aims to blanket the world in kindness and is on a mission to make the world safer and smarter. While maintaining its identity as a family company based in the Philippines, it proudly boasts a diverse and inclusive workforce, with women comprising over 71% of its employees and with nearly 100% representation in leadership. For today's episode, we delve into the profound impact of the pandemic on Laura's business. She shares how this experience has led her to realize the need to break free from the addiction to the illusion of certainty and instead embrace the process of relearning how to flourish within uncertainty. So please join me in extending a warm welcome to Laura. Welcome, Laura. It's so good to have you on the show.
I'm excited. I got dressed up for this. I never go out. I never get dressed up. But for this, I made an effort.
Fortunate to have met you in person as well, even though you're all the way from the Philippines. And you just told me before this interview that you don't normally go out. And so I feel really privileged to have met you right here in Sydney before.
You know, I like to say my roots were like in hip hop and punk, and I'm aging into an old hippie. But I think the pandemic made me a bit of an agoraphobe. I got to tell you, I don't like going out. So yeah, I mean, I guess an upside is what you said. When you do go out, those moments become extra precious, you know?
Yeah. Well, you're very memorable. I really enjoyed your energy and I'm excited to talk to you today. But yeah, first up, introduce to the audience a little bit about your business. When did you start it? What does it do?
Okay, so it's a family business. It's called VMV HYPOALLERGENICS. And it was actually started by my mom in 1979. And she's one of these sort of really weird kind of brainiacs. So she graduated high school at 14, med school at 21, was already published in the United States, in her early 20s. And so the origin of the brand, it's a brand of skincare and cosmetics for the neediest, most demanding skins in the world, is what we say. And it's all backed by research. So we have something like 80 plus clinical studies published in peer-reviewed journals around the world. And our main thing is we omit all 109 top contact allergens from our formulations. If you bake, imagine someone telling you you can't use the top 100 ingredients because they're allergens. That's kind of what we do. So it is a pain in the ass. It is a wonderful brand. It's very much sort of, it's a bit like Mentos, right? It's like hard on the outside with all the science, but like soft and cushy and warm on the inside. So we really do take care of people with like psoriasis or eczema or really stubborn melasma, cystic acne and things like that. So,
yeah, and I noticed it's not just skincare, it's like makeup. You've kind of reached the range now.
Yeah. Actually, makeup made up about 30% of our business pre-pandemic. The reason is if you have skin allergies and you can only use our shampoo and nothing else, it's a pretty good chance you can't use any other foundation either. So we tend to, people tend to stay in our universe, which is really nice and go from generation to generation. So
yeah, and you ship it worldwide?
We do. We're very much the little engine that could. So it sounds bigger than it is. We're very much still a burp in the universe. So we're in the Philippines, small presence in the US, Singapore, Japan, Costa Rica, Mexico, but I'm having a bit of a problem there right now. Entrepreneurs, right? This is what EOers go through all the time. So yeah, we do ship internationally, and we're growing. The incidence of skin sensitivity has been growing a lot too, especially due to the pandemic. So there's a lot of demand, a lot of potential. We're very excited.
Yeah. And you actually have a farm? So what's your business process?
Yeah.
like you bought it from a company and try to label it. Like, tell me a little bit about your production.
No, we're very vertically integrated. So we do not outsource, period. My mom was really adamant about that because, if you were to mix a formulation without allergens in the same vat that was used to mix something with fragrance, that would still seep into the formulation. So we can't do that. So everything's very tightly controlled. And the farm, it was so funny when my mom first came and said, I really want to study virgin coconut oil. I had the eye roll of the century. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, this is stuff that, we grew up with as like something our grandmothers did, but it didn't feel aligned with the brand and science and all that. But kudos to her. She actually did some of the first clinical studies that were evidence-based, randomized, double-blind trials on virgin coconut oil and skin conditions like atopic dermatitis, et cetera. And so, it legitimized it. And so we use a lot of it. And it actually comes from her farm, from her father's farm. So it's a small certified organic farm in Leyte here in the Philippines. And it works with the community as well. And so we do free education or on organic farming and things like that.
Amazing. It's just amazing to hear from having a mum that's an entrepreneur. Like, I mean, yeah, I didn't come from that kind of background, and it's not common for me to see, or witness any like Asian mums that are in entrepreneurship. And so, yeah, where did it come from? Which chain, which generation from your family that was entrepreneur? Because you're an entrepreneur now. Are your kids trending that way too?
What a question. Okay, let me make this concise and succinct as I can make it. My mother does not consider herself an entrepreneur or a business person. In fact, the first tension in the family was she said, you cannot use my name because I'm a doctor and I'm a researcher and we can't sell a product. So her name, VMV, is actually her initials. She said, don't use my name and don't use me to sell. So she does the formulations, the research, and the publishing, the clinical studies, but we can't use her for marketing. And she doesn't really do the business. She really is science, clinical care, her patients, etc. When my father started it with her, that was the agreement. She would kind of be the cook in the kitchen and the science, and he would market and sell. So it was actually an early challenge to how do we get the science out there without mentioning her, right? So that was an early thing. And then I don't have a background in business. I have a fraught relationship with business and capitalism in general. My background was in academia. I was going to be a professor, and I studied critical theory, race, gender, empowerment, things like that. So how it happened is very much a need-based thing. She had patients who had allergies, contact acne, contact pigmentation, and there was nothing at the time. So she would do this research, have it made in her clinic pharmacy. The results from that would then get turned into a product, and that's sort of how it developed. And I came home because my father got sick, and I was asked to come home, and I didn't know quite how to tell them, just, call me when you need me. So I came home, and yeah, so I was clueless.
Yeah. So it's just organically happened, and you just fell into that position of running the business. So what's your role in the business now? Is your mum and dad still active in the organization?
My father passed from multiple myeloma, and so my mom is still active, but again, really in the research side. Thank God my younger sister got bitten by the bug to go to med school at 35. Fantastic. So now she's, a wonderful successor to my mom for that. I kind of run everything, but what I like to tell people is since the pandemic, like my card really should say CEO/janitor, sometime messenger. Like at this point, the company got really gutted in the pandemic. So we're about half the size that we used to be. And part of that is painful, but it's funny, the other part is it's gotten us back to a real truth of who we are. And the truth is we have a real small business kind of spirit about us. We have a lot of moxie and a lot of gumption, and we like having a much more direct relationship with our customers. It's been nice getting small again. I dreaded it. I was so, the whole EO thing, right? Work on your business, not in your business. And I was kind of there. And then to get back to it was like, oh my God, like my nails are still on the wall, like clawing, trying not to get back to that. And the truth is, it's been wonderful, really rewarding.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. I mean, this is exactly the conversation we want to have on this podcast today. So you mentioned that COVID hit. Now, bring me back to that time. Like, what happened? Like, what was it like before? And then, you said you look. It's almost like looking back now. It's like, yep, it's meant to be. But How did you really feel at that time? And what changed in the business?
I keep telling people, you know, that emoji with exploding head? That's very much what it was. It was like mini aneurysms every day because it was an instant shutdown. And the Philippines had one of the longer lockdowns, right? Globally, 3 years close to.
Yeah.
And the majority of our business at that time was retail, brick and mortar. So that was gone. So overnight, it went from revenue to zero, right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't very cash rich. The business wasn't very cash rich at the time to begin with. So that was just paralysis and fear that we instantly changed. So we're lucky in that we make essentials too. Like we make really basic things, antiperspirant, shampoo, hand sanitizers. So we could still manufacture that. We could donate a lot of it to first responders. We even started a really great study on virgin coconut oil topically applied for COVID, actually, for prevention. So there were things that we could do and we felt we were giving back, but you know, after holding on as long as we could to all of our employees, eventually it was like, I'm sorry, we got to close this part of the business. So I'm going to emphasize this. Our primary business was brick and mortar retail. By the maybe middle to the latter third of the pandemic, we had closed all of our brick and mortar stores and counters. So it's about 60 counters and about 12 boutiques. And we just stopped. And we said, we're going to have to go and pivot to an entirely e-commerce business. And we were very lucky in that a sub-distributor in the Philippines said, if you're going to leave all of your counters in these department stores, I want that business. I was like, shoot, yeah, you know, manna from heaven as far as I was concerned. So that ate into our margins a little bit. But the way I explained it to our salespeople is imagine we went from 100 to 0 and now we're back up to like 50. I'll take the 50, you know? So we're still present in brick and mortar, but not us directly anymore. And in a way, again, it's been silver lining looking back because now we can really focus just on our core, which is formulation, research, manufacturing, and the brand itself. And I don't have to worry about building the stores and staffing them and all that inventory. That's now handled by specialists in that. But at the time, it was, I mean, all this gray hair that you see, that all happened in like a month. Yeah, it happened in like a month, you know. I thought I'd be like, I don't know, 60 before I got my first white hair because that's just the way my family is. But no, a month.
Yeah. And you mentioned to me that, like, I guess back then, prior to the pandemic, we kind of thought life was predictable in a sense. We've never been hit like this before. And so you mentioned the word kind of like embracing uncertainty or chaos.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so the biggest learning maybe of my life honestly came from the pandemic. And that was, there was a wonderful quote that came out on Twitter that said, what we're witnessing is the withdrawal from the addiction to the myth of certainty. And I went, Jesus, it hit something very deep in my core. And I started a lot of reading, a lot of sort of self-reflection. I think a lot of us did this in the pandemic. And a big realization was, who the fuck told us life was supposed to be predictable? Nothing in nature is predictable. Everything is moving constantly. Anything that's not moving is dead. Even rocks are growing, right? But somehow human beings have the arrogance to think, no, we can actually control everything. You get the right grades, you go to the right school, you get the right job, you marry the right person or whatever it is. It's just not like that. It's not this sort of steady climb. It's not even a roller coaster. It's like this gyroscopic freaking nightmare of tectonic plates moving all the time. And so it hit me when we were talking about upscaling, upscaling all the time. Our employees at the time, it was like, everything digital, you have to upscale your employees and teach them this. And I was like, we have to learn how to thrive in uncertainty because that's never going to change. This happened to be that pandemic, but it could be a war in Ukraine or an earthquake or a typhoon. And if we're so set on the idea that we can control things, it's just never going to work. We're going to be miserable all the time. So that was really, interestingly enough, what ended up the main focus of the company was how do we getting used to uncertainty and maybe even finding joy in that,
Yeah. And how did you teach that? I mean, I personally know how to teach myself and, learn from Tony Robbins and just do whatever it is. But how do you prep your own team to go embrace that?
We have really sort of put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into the culture of the company. One reason that I think some EOers might find interesting, it was out of the goodness of my heart and sort of my personal mission on earth. and just wanting to be happy and being sick of the bullshit and the meanness and the nastiness and hyper individualism. But the other half was actually a pretty strategic business move. In the Philippines, we were really being threatened pre-pandemic by all the business outsourcing outfits and call centers who were paying twice what normal companies our size would have at the time. And I discovered, you know what, if we can't compete on that level, we can compete from a culture level. And so pre-pandemic, we were doing things like a 4-day work week, 30-day paid leave, longer maternity and paternity leave. So we wanted to be able to have same-sex couples have parental leaves, right? Flexible workplace options. So when the pandemic hit, all of that stuff, virtual work, it just didn't really impact us as much. And there was so much work done on culture. But what really changed in the pandemic was leaning into that further, because pre-pandemic, I felt a lot of pressure, I think, from the business and entrepreneurial world, imagined or not, telling me that I was being too soft but those aren't really metrics, but, And then the pandemic kind of gave me validation that, Christo Popov says this all the time in EO talks, a company is just a group of people. So if your people aren't healthy and grounded and centered and physically healthy, then who the hell's running your company? So we really leaned into that. And so it was a lot of, oh my God, mentorships, one-on-ones. I have one-on-ones with my whole management team. They do one-on-ones with their next in lines. They do one-on-ones. So our mentorship starts from entry level on up. And we have forum-like sessions. So we have different circles, like Padawans, Jedis, etc., Shifus. And we have this kind of mentorship thing. And then we do psychological first aid training. Point is, there's a lot you can do as long as you're crystal clear that this is a priority for you as a company, Then there's, you're spoiled with a choice. There's so much that can be done.
Wow, I really needed to hear that, because I guess I am torn between this whole metrics, numbers, and scale. And then there's, I don't know if it's a female thing, but I'm very soft and very kind of mushy feeling. And so you're validating me that when you lean into that, you survive and you thrive because you're kind of like a group of happy people together.
I want to speak to that specifically because I think as women, we are taught to believe it's a female thing. And it really isn't. It is how we're socialized. Men are taught, I think really unfortunately with toxic masculinity, to believe that there's no room for emotion and care and that kind of thing. Biologically, empathy is necessary. Our species relies on empathy because we're not giraffes or antelope that get born and can walk in a minute or an hour. Human babies, it takes us so long to become self-reliant. We're tribal people. We rely on each other, and empathy, that's required. Whales are the same thing. I actually learned this from Peter Senge. Anyone who's rolling their eyes about, this isn't business. Peter Senge said this when he came to the Philippines. He said, it's the soft stuff that's the hard stuff. If you get the soft stuff right, everything else will follow. He said empathy is built into us as a species, as it is with other species like whales. There is a biological need for it. But we socialize our, quote, males, cisgender identifying males as tough, no emotions, which is bullshit.
So we kind of just bought into this label, and then we thought we can't get out of it. And there's, there's power. What happened in us. Okay. And so you mentioned earlier on that you kind of had to step back in and start wearing different hats. Where are you at right now? And, where do you want to take the business to, or as a CEO or founder or the kind of owner of it?
We're very much still in recovery mode. And what I've really tried to do is, as things have opened up, I found that the biggest risk that our teams have is this, oh my God, we're not fast enough. We're not, like everything. It's like we forgot all the lessons from the pandemic. And I find myself week after week going, we control our own pace. We can absolutely go by our own timing, what we know to be true. We know from a lot of studies that the only fix we need is stocks, because we were out of stock for so long. We had working cap problems. When you're slashed in half, that's bound to happen. So it's not a simple fix, but at least it's clear. Or it's not an easy fix, I should say, but it is simple because we don't have to, thank God, recreate demand for our brand. It's through the roof. We just need to supply it, right? So I'm really trying to get everyone to kind of slow down a little bit, which is maybe ironic or maybe counterintuitive, but I'm trying to get people to kind of slow down and focus on the basics, and let's get those stocks back out there and don't panic, and let's slow things down. And then we want to get back to, we have few distribution possibilities in some new markets, but the fact that we suffered means also a lot of retailers and wholesalers and distributors did too. And even raw material suppliers. I've had some suppliers go out of business, and I'm now hunting down new suppliers for ingredients or packaging or whatnot. So I just think about it as recovery. It's like, if you go to the emergency room and it's cold blue and stat and you're getting the paddles. So now we've stabilized, but it is recovery mode. So you don't leave the emergency room and start chugging down a bottle of scotch and partying. You have recovery time, right? So you get back to a healthy lifestyle, get back to basics, you build up your resistance slowly, et cetera, and then you start going nuts again.
Yeah. I've heard the saying, slow down to go fast, right? And we need to kind of get the foundation right. Yeah, yesterday, we were fortunate to meet Vern Harnish, and he actually challenged, it was my first time in person with him, and he challenged us to think of our big, hairy, audacious goal, BHAG, and not only should it be big, like 10x, he's talking about 30x, like really big. And I guess, how do you feel about kind of this entrepreneur expectation to go, I have this big vision, and to also kind of like what you just said before, right? Really take your time, really enjoying a life. And where do you find that balance, even personally for yourself?
So I have really gone down the rabbit hole of, say, Brene Brown, Simon Sinek, and Adam Grant. What I really appreciate about them is they're not hardcore business people, and they really are much more trained in the social sciences and maybe even psychological, sciences to a certain extent. Yeah. Simon Sinek has a new book called The Infinite Game, and he has a fantastic podcast episode with Brene Brown about it. And I really like the way he put it. He's like, if you just think about BHAGs, I think they're important, but they're not the game. There is no winning in business. If you really want to have a business that goes beyond multiple generations, et cetera, you're being guided by a higher purpose, not by a product, an app, a goal. It's goals and apps and numbers within a much longer game, right? His whole thing is people come to you because of your why. People want to contribute to a business whose purpose they agree with, and they want to continue contributing to that business even after they leave it. That's the kind of thing I'm interested in. I feel like, numbers and huge apps and all of these growth metrics and whatever are, of course, really important because we have to pay our employees and be profitable and grow. But if we're in it just for that, at least I don't have any interest for that. I don't want to do something bigger, longer, more important. Our why is to save the world's skin. And I always tell people, it's not just dermatological. It's to do no harm, to contribute to good, so that kind of thing for me is much more compelling.
Yeah, I totally get you. And I came to a realization many years ago that we all eventually were going to die. Well, there's only so much money we can spend in this lifetime. What is the point of really hustling and double and 10 times, 100 times to make all that money? It's almost like a game, and you get all these points. This point sounds really good, but ultimately it's not what is true happiness. So, for you, what is happiness for you nowadays? What do you do every day, or what's your general goal that keeps you feeling fulfilled?
So I did not have the good fortune of having a brain naturally wired towards happiness. So I spent a lot of my life actually really almost, I would say, chemically wired towards sadness and darkness and anxiety, right? And when I had kids, an EO member's mom said to me, it's better caught than taught. Kids will not listen to you. They will mimic you. They're watching you, and they're going to pick up on things that you don't teach them. And it hit me really hard that I cannot hope that my children will be happy, content, balanced individuals if I'm not that authentically myself, right? So there's a wonderful EO New York learning event with Chip Conley on emotional equations, and it kind of started this whole journey for me on happiness. The biggest realization for me was it doesn't just happen. It is a skill, and it's something to be practiced, like a muscle, like working out, like whatever. So every day I have a really specific regimen of what time I wake up, my reading and journaling, my boot camp. I need to get the endorphins in the head. I don't work out to get a bikini body. That ship has sailed. Thank you. Had it. I'm done. We're good. And doing my gratitude journal, all these things. But it is very much I cannot go through my day without doing these things, or I will absolutely spiral downward. So it is an active work for me. And it's been extremely rewarding. So my kids do too. My kids have been doing gratitude journals now since they were 7. I've been like, hey, if you ever want to talk to a therapist, just let me know. And they've already tried it just to figure out what it was like. So they've talked to mine. They call them up their friends now, their buddies. And so that's what we do as a practice to make happiness a reality instead of waiting for something to make me happy. Do you know what I mean? But my definition of it is really peace, because it used to be not that for me. I used to have nightmares a lot and, be roiling physically, just feel heat and anxiety. So when it's quiet in my head and I can sleep dreamlessly, it's just beautiful. So
I totally agree with everything you say. I have such a strict routine, and when I'm not doing it, I feel sad or not happy. But I really love the learning from you in that you're trying to encourage people to really think beyond themselves for their kids. It's like you as a parent would love for your kids to grow up happy and etc. So you need to be that example, regardless of whatever is happening. You really need to try. So I love that meaning of happiness. But then what does, I guess, business or success mean to you back then versus now for you?
Back then, it was really a lot of pressure to, oh my God, we want to be the first Filipino company that's premium skincare, that's in like Vogue and we did all that. And I wasn't happy. I was proud, but it was so much stress. And I don't know. I think it really kind of rended something very core to us. And it was when we started getting back to this language and these ideas of why are we put on this earth, for crying out loud, right? Like my personal why is really simple. I'm here to help good win, period. And the company is here to save the world's skin. So it's so nice now that that's so entrenched that we have our production workers, right? Like after they put a bottle in a box and they put it on the conveyor belt to go into the shipment or whatever, a few of them have been like, yay, more skin saved. Yes. Like it's lovely. And I kind of feel like what would be our sort of ultimate marker as a business would be when people start thinking about hypoallergenic, we're top of mind, like the virtual generic for that category, right? Like before Xerox was for photocopiers, that would kind of be the marker. But I don't know, at this point, I'm just happy kind of getting all these emails from customers who are like, my baby hasn't slept in 4 years. Thanks to your boo-boo bomb. Please don't ever discontinue this product. Can you please customize a kilo of it for me? I'm like, that'll be like $1,000. That's okay. I'll take 2. That makes me happy. You know what I mean? Like people who I couldn't shampoo for 20 years and now I can. I mean, that's awesome, right? Like that's putting real good in the world. That kind of makes me excited. Oh, and then we're launching like a new program where we're going to be able to do that. Like every purchase will now be able to donate, because our products are expensive, but we'll be able to donate now to people who have psoriasis or eczema and can't afford us. So we're going to be supporting clinics. Like,
so inspiring, so uplifting. Well, I usually wrap it up with that final question, which I already know how you make me feel, but ultimately, like, what do you want to leave in the world? What do you want people to remember Laura for?
So this might sound really, you said aging into an old hippie, right? But this is the truth. I kind of don't want to be remembered. I'm really looking forward to kind of evolving into ephemera, into nothingness. Like I want to make sure I helped good win however I could when I was alive, but being remembered isn't kind of on my wish list. I like that idea that we're here for such a limited time. It is so beautiful. And then we exhale and then we just become part of all this energy around us. For some reason, it's becoming so appealing to me. I find it bigger than me. I find that it gives me instant calm to think I'm just part of that. I love that. So yeah.
Wow, that is such a unique answer. I've never heard it before, but it really helped me feel at peace somehow too. It's almost like I didn't have to work anymore. I know I'm dead, but at the time I felt like there was still more work to do. And now I feel like a lot less pressure as well. I
If
mean,
I say it in a certain voice, it's ASMR or whatever.
but look, I think you're just a very humble person. Everything you're already doing right now, you are remembered. I still remember you for the moment I met you. So
It's the cussing. It's the cussing that usually does it.
and that's the thing. Yeah, you try to act goofy and all that, but deep down, you're so centered, so kind, so calm. So I can't wait to meet you in person in the Philippines this year. So thank you again. Yes, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you. You'll be in my gratitude journal tonight in permanent marker.